Hey, what's up, guys? Corey here, and welcome to the final presidential debate on October 22nd, 2020, between President Donald Trump and previous Vice President Joe Biden. Um, I'm sure this debate won't be boring at all, but this is my live reaction and response to it. So let's get right into it. Here we go.
Against the coronavirus, President Trump, the first question is for you.
Here we go.
The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the
First
hospital
question.
tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Important question.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges.
I really hope coronavirus doesn't take up like half of this debate.
It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have
But I wouldn't be surprised.
Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital, I had it, and I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure, but I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune.
See, and that's very important. And I'm not going to pause every time I speak. I'll probably go back and forth between pausing and just turning the volume down on their side. I think Trump's 74 years old, and he just had coronavirus, and he's doing fine. And I'm not saying that's the case for every single person. It's not, but this isn't as bad as what people are treating it like. I mean, even Biden walked on the stage with a mask on. This just isn't that big. I mean, to call this a pandemic right now is, I mean, to say it's an overstatement is an understatement. Yeah, so let's just keep listening.
More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of,
and I got my
masks and
phone Bible here, because I'll probably have to use that. I have Bible Hub pulled up on my phone. Might be using that. If not, I'll definitely be using scripture by memory.
As I say, we're rounding the turn. We're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. You hear nothing else I say tonight. Hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day. And there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what...
Okay, I have to interrupt right there. Disease happens and people die from, I mean, people die, thousands of people die every day. I don't understand why every single one of these deaths, assuming that's the correct number of deaths, because the death rate is inflated, but saying that this is all just Trump's fault, that people are getting sick and dying because he refuses to lock the country down and take people's rights away. I've talked about this so much on my channel. I've talked about it on TikTok. Leviticus 13. If someone is sick, they should quarantine, and people who are not sick don't have to pretend to be. The government doesn't have the right to close things down. That's his approach. I mean, that's a tyrannical approach. I've said this many times. Many people have said this many times. You just can't say it's Trump's fault that diseases exist. All right, we live on planet Earth. Disease is real. You can't stop it. So, all right.
What's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks,
Turn it up more.
the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president
That's debatable, Biden.
still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses.
I'm going to try to not interrupt so much.
And give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to
And
do
make
that.
sure we can hear them
We're in a situation
this time.
now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be
Okay, this is important.
within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies. I think within a matter of...
All right, I'm going to turn that down some. Yeah, it's not a guarantee. And I know Crowder does this in his live streams. I think you have to continuously talk and turn volume down and things like that just for copyright stuff. Fox News never gives me any copyright issues. I've had it with CNN, but Fox News doesn't. I don't have a problem with them. Again, Trump just had this and he's fine. And I just don't understand, like with Biden, just blaming him for people dying. Like, you just can't do that. All right. It's just not consistent.
We have the vaccine, and we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people.
Okay. We're about to go into a dark winter. See, that sounds so overly dramatic, like sci-fi movie, Game of Thrones type thing. It's just, we're about to, honestly, after this election, I wouldn't be surprised if we stopped hearing about coronavirus altogether. At least not nearly as often, which will probably happen. But don't quote me on that. Nothing's a guarantee. Like, a vaccine could be here in weeks, could be here in months, could never be here. We have no idea. We don't even know if the vaccine will be effective. There's just not a guarantee on these things. And again, Biden, we live in a fallen world where the curse exists. People die. People get sick. You can't stop it. And it's really not the government's job to take care of our health anyway.
Already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about, don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
Come
Say
on,
over
man.
soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the
You
basement
know what
or
he's
in a
talking
beautiful
about.
room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families, every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then
30
I have a
seconds.
question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to.
I'm going to turn that down. 99% survival rate for all people, 99.9% survival rate for young people. This is incredibly high of a survival rate. The only people that get sick and die from this are people, well, pretty much the only people anyway, that what I've heard is people that are very, very old and or have compromised immune systems due to other conditions. Look, that puts this kind of a sickness on par with things like influenza, flu. It's just not as bad as they're saying. It's not a hoax. It's real, but it's just not as bad as they're saying. Take off the masks. Live your life.
Coming. When it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry. It's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed...
Oh, is that a reference to the last debate?
And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic.
That's true.
I think he called me racist even, and because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did. You certainly did.
I talked about a xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handling
He thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it.
Okay, here we go.
What do you say to Americans who are fearful
That's
that
important.
the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the
Right.
virus?
All
What I
that
would say
matters.
is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned.
Okay, see, that's very inconsistent. He said that he would support shutdowns if scientists would. I mean, that's the question. He's not even answering it. Oh, well, he might be.
Do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no,
Okay.
I'm not shutting down the neighborhood, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with...
Okay, he's avoiding the question. The bottom line is he says he'll shut down the country if scientists say that he should do so. I mean, what we're looking at right now is freedom versus safety. Freedom is better than safety, and really freedom is safety. So, I mean, you can't just shut everything down forever. But the question is whether or not they're going to shut things down after the election anyway. Who knows?
I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country.
Okay, hopefully this moderator is better than some of the other ones that we've had in these debates and the town halls. I didn't make a video on the town halls. I was going to, but I was too late, and I just didn't feel like doing it. I don't know. It's...
We ought to be able to safely open, but they need resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another.
Yeah, okay. And how do you do that, Joe? How do you do that? Government control. The government seizing control of your businesses. This is socialism. All right, there's the solution to coronavirus for liberals is seizing businesses. That's no bueno. And just a comment on the, issue with opening schools. Get rid of public schools. It's not the role of government according to God's law in Romans 13 and Psalm 2. It's not their job to be involved in education or health care. And if you just get them out of both, that solves this issue. Just get the government out of what they're not supposed to be doing anyway.
Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying.
Let's talk about that, Joe. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that under Democrat rule in New York and New York City, how you have COVID patients literally going into nursing homes and nursing homes got wiped out. I mean, look, the freedom freedom to have a business and go outside and, not have to cover your face aside. I mean, people on the Daily Wire even talked about this. Matt Walsh talked about this, how in New York, COVID patients under government rule had to go to nursing homes. That's the place that they chose. Those deaths are on them. That they have blood on their hands for this. That's what you have under liberal rule when it comes to coronavirus, is a lot of taking away freedom, tyranny, death, and all these other horrible things that are going down, the lockdowns that Trump's been mentioning here. Freedom versus safety. Freedom always wins, and freedom is safer than what Biden is proposing here. Let's turn it up.
Expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, you know, this is not going to be a problem.
He did say that.
Democrat, but that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the Americans.
Okay, see this. He was repeating what he was telling him. I mean, it's amazing how they'll point fingers at Trump and then appeal to all these doctors and the CDC and all that. It's just unbelievable. And it's inconsistent. Look, I'm not pro-Trump. I'm not going to be voting for Trump. I didn't vote for him in 2016. Voting for Thomas Hoefling because he has a biblical platform. But I just... How long does this same conversation have to go on? I cannot wait to stop hearing about coronavirus. I really hope they stop talking about it after the election, even though that's total bullcrap if they do, but I hope they do, because I'm sick of hearing about it. Oh my gosh, I'm sick of hearing about it. Yeah. Let's turn it up.
Blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact,
here we go.
We beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able to.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Don't tell me about Wall Street.
Average contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence...
Okay, we're about a half hour and we're finally getting away from COVID.
Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American...
All right, this is kind of... Biden mentioned, I'm not even going to talk about the last one. I'm so tired of the conspiracy theory that Russia is the reason why Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America. They're not. This has been disproven on so many levels, on so many occasions. It's not even funny. I'm so sick of hearing about it. Oh my gosh.
Rudy Giuliani. He's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you.
Here
Let
we
me,
go.
let me ask the
Yes.
question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife.
Biden can't
And
talk.
You got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and you know, someday you're going to have to explain why did you get 3.5. I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that, and through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family.
It's true.
And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening.
True.
And it should have never
All
happened.
of that happened.
And I think you
All of that's
owe
accurate.
an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
That's all
President
true.
Biden,
Let's
you
see
may
what he
respond
says.
for
Stay
30
straight
seconds.
here.
And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from
That
any
is
foreign
such a-
source ever in my life.
That is a straight up lie.
Has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever.
That's
ever. Number one.
bullcrap,
Number two,
Joe.
this is a president. I have released all of my tax returns. 22 years.
I
Go
knew that-
look at them. 22.
I knew they were going to go to that. They talk about the tax returns and him paying $750 or something like that. He keeps saying he hasn't. But the fact of the matter is he is dodging the subject of him taking all of that money. It happened.
China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here?
Biden
Why
is
don't
full
release
of
your tax
crap.
return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you could
that.
release
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man.
That's
I think.
true.
I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some
That's
questions
true.
about all of
Respond
this,
to
but I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have
soon
a
as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release them
I
to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
I have a
don't have
lot
the
of
time.
people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and
Water.
millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance
Some
to
point
talk
about
about
this
this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years
Everybody
you're going to
knows
release your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
Very
So
quickly, President Trump,
Come
and then I want
on,
to get to
man.
two questions to
Come
both of
on,
you.
y'all.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. It's accurate. I don't know what more needs to be done in order for that to be disproven. You couldn't disprove it anymore. You really couldn't. I mean, that's just evil what they, what the liberals were doing to him during all this time when it comes to the whole Russian collusion BS. Because that's what it is. It's BS. But I mean, like Biden has no room to talk on any of this stuff, like pressing Trump on any of this tax stuff. And I'll admit, I don't really know much about that whole thing with him, other than what I've seen in the debates. But I mean, I do know that Biden, the whole getting money from Russia thing, that's absolutely true. And he's not answering it. So.
Impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Never
President
to
Trump,
deal with
let me
China. By the
ask
way,
my question to you.
But
and
could
then
I just,
you'll-
one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world, I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy
I'm going to let the Vice President
That's
respond to that quickly,
100%
and then I need to get to a
dishonest.
question to you. Very
No
quickly, Mr.
basis for
Vice
that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's when it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States.
Okay, this is this is just kind of becoming a back and forth thing, which it's getting kind of exciting, but it's kind of boring, sticking on the same topic. Like just kind of in this way, but I don't know. The moderator seems to be better than the last. I like that she's letting them speak and respond, even though it's not really on her itinerary or whatever she's got in front of her. But you know that her being a good moderator could change, so I don't want to speak too soon on that. Let's turn it up.
We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly.
I tell you what, I remember watching the roast of Donald Trump on Comedy Central. Many years ago when it came out. What was it, like 2011 maybe? And he said on there that he was going to run for president of the United States. And I tell you what, watching that back then, hearing about his statements, the election in 2012, and you know, all the way up to, you know, him getting popular in the polls and things like that. I never thought back then in like 2013, like what he was just talking about, never thought that our president would be Donald Trump. Ever. No one back then thought it would happen either.
Very quickly, and then we're going to move on to North
with $1.5
Korea.
billion from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers. because
Taxpayers' money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China
Not
paid
true.
$28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Our response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly.
Oh gosh,
If
I'm
you're
so
making-
I don't even want to listen to that. I'm so tired. He's not debating me. Why is he looking at me? He's debating Trump. Look at Trump. Trump's looking at you. Trump's talking to you. He's pointing fingers at you. This is a debate. And I am so sick. I mean, Kamala was doing this too in the vice presidential debate. I'm so tired of liberals looking at the screen, at the camera, and making an emotional appeal. Like, don't you want to not suffer anymore? Don't you want your grandma to live? I'm so tired of the emotional appeal. That's not an argument, and it's a bad argument, but it's not an argument. He's talking about not answering the substance of issues. He's refusing. I mean, there are plenty of questions he hasn't answered that he's lied about. The whole millions of dollars from Russia thing, it's true. He can't talk.
Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
we
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and
seconds.
I have a good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat right
Because
now?
I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're...
Okay, but the millions of dollars from Russia thing is true. Like, you just can't talk, Biden. You can't. And I'm sorry, but I thought no war was a good thing. I mean, I get North Korea is evil, but so is Russia. So is China, Biden. And you're dodging the things that Trump is saying about you concerning China and Russia. The Russia thing with you is absolutely true. But peace is good. Now, on the flip side, I would be totally okay with rescuing Christians that suffer in North Korea and things like that. But, I mean, no war is a good thing. Oh, well.
Let's move on and talk about American families.
He left me a mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do need to move on.
They left me a mess. North Korea was a mess. And in fact, if you remember the first 2 or 3 months, there was a very dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a they left us a mess. And Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country had.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court. because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision, run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down, everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is...
It's true. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. Obamacare is garbage, and the reason why it's garbage is because it's not... I'm going to get straight to the point here. The reason why Obamacare is garbage is because it is outside of the role of the government. The government's job, according to Romans chapter 13, is to be an avenger, to punish those who do evil, uphold God's law, and serve God in the world. Psalm chapter 2, the governments of the world are to obey the Son. Jesus is the king over politicians. Their role is not healthcare. This goes back to coronavirus. It's not the government's role to make sure I'm healthy. It's not the government's role to make me pretend to be sick. It's not the government's role to steal people's money and give them to other people. It's not the government's role to seize hospitals and make them do things. We're not a socialist country. Obamacare is a form of socialism because it's redistributing wealth and getting the government involved in a business like healthcare. It's no good because it's unbiblical. Let the free market be the free market. Deregulate businesses. Stop taxing people. And healthcare will be more affordable. The government's the problem with healthcare. Get them out of it and the problem is solved. Man.
If you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually...
Man, this is boring. The first debate, I think this is a better debate than the last debate between these two individuals. It's gotten a little exciting and lively, not as much as the last one, but it's getting a little boring. I'm tired of hearing about coronavirus, and the only part of this debate that has been interesting to me so far is talking about Trump's taxes. Not that in itself, because that's boring, but that in the fight with Biden's whole, getting money from Russia thing, because that needed to be talked about, like, big time.
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President
But this is a little boring.
What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response to
it's
them?
ridiculous. It's like saying that, we're the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions as well as a whole range of other people who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives.
Unions are cancerous.
And this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children.
Because they team up with people
How
like
many of
him.
you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick?
All right, well, that was blasphemy. So, yeah, but he's a person of faith, right? He trusts he's a person of faith, but blasphemy just rolls off his tongue. And I'm not saying Christians can't ever do that, and that just means they're not Christians. What I'm saying is, just tack that on to things that expose him for what he is. You don't hear Mike Pence talk like that. You don't hear Jeff Durbin talk like that at Apologia Church. I mean, I'm just saying. Man. Turn
And
up.
he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask
He goes for a year. There will be no fracking. There will be no petroleum.
We have a number of topics we're
No,
going to
but
get
that's a
to.
big- that's a big question.
We're going to get to. We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized
I have to
medicine.
respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period.
Okay. People deserve to have affordable health care. Okay. The whole health care is a right, not a privilege thing or whatever. Again, what does Scripture say about the role of government? What does Scripture say about the free market? What does Scripture say about business? Capitalism, let the free market be the free market. Government, punish evil, be an avenger, obey God, obey Jesus. That's the role of government. It's not supposed to be involved in businesses. People have the right to anyone should have the freedom to be able to pursue the health care that they want, as long as the provider is in agreement. But nobody has the right to take money away from workers in order to pay for their hospital bills, and nobody has the right to make doctors do anything that they don't want to do. Just saying.
They're going to destroy Medicare. This is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan.
Look, theonomy, which just means God's law, having a theonomic view on politics makes all of these issues so unbelievably easy. If you just go to Scripture, I mean, yeah, Scripture as a whole, but specifically God's law and texts like Romans 13 and Psalm 2, I mean, it just makes all these political issues so easy. The Bible talks about all this stuff. I mean, it's not even funny. Again, I'm not saying Trump falls in line with all of that, but more than Biden does. I mean, let's just be real. It's unbelievable. When you take that out of the equation, this is what you got. And it's no bueno.
Made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more. $700 billion more, because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on,
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to the next question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House, because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3
Congress
plans,
exists.
and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice
does.
President,
You know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you.
Okay, I gotta.
Because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed it.
Let's talk about that. Okay, so the Democratic platform. First of all, solution when it comes to poverty. When it comes to poverty, just a couple things on this. Jesus made it very clear in Scripture. Jesus says to give to the poor, right? Jesus is all about Christians, the church, helping the poor, helping the needy, right? That's fine, right? But that doesn't mean socialism, government intervention. This is the church voluntarily giving out of their own pocket when they can, when they desire to do so. This is charities. Look, Samaritan's Purse, Samaritan's Ministries have so many resources, so many people, so much money worldwide. They can help literally anybody. Yeah. Biblically, are Christians supposed to be helping the poor and the needy, the sick, the hungry? Yes. Christians should be doing this. That's biblical. But that's not the same thing as socialism. That's not the same thing as taxing people. It's such a twist on that. But a very simple, if we go to God's law and we apply God's law, how to keep people from falling into poverty and from being poor, deregulate businesses. Let the free market be the free market. Government, get out of business. By the way, that would take care of crony capitalism, right? That would take care of unions and public sector unions and all that stuff that Democrats love. And stop taxing people. Stop taxing their income. Stop forcing them to pay taxes. Let it be voluntary. And that would keep the government in check too. And that's also a biblical position. Let people keep their money. Let people be able to make money and make their own business decisions, get the government out of business, and that would pull people out of poverty. That would create jobs, because that's all biblical. God's law is good for government and business and the people. It's so easy. It's so simple, man.
How they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. It's not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to
Excuse me,
immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly.
want
He
to
said
get
we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different.
Yeah, raising taxes or minimum wage doesn't help small businesses. Getting rid of the minimum wage altogether should absolutely happen. It shouldn't be a state by state thing. Minimum wage is unbiblical. Businesses should be free to make their own business decisions. That's it. It's just not the role of government.
You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to
What I
$15 an
really
hour. Is
like,
that still the case?
and I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really
administration?
like, in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick
No
response,
one
Vice
should
President
work
Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening?
The first responders that are, I mean, if we're talking about police, the first responders that are racist, are we talking about police here? I mean, that's just one thing I have to set aside. I mean, that's if police are included in that, that's incredibly inconsistent. That aside, Joe, you're the one that wants to raise taxes. You're the one that wants things like the Green New Deal. You're the one that wants people to pay more in minimum wage. You're the one that wants people to pay lots more money for all these stupid government programs. You can't talk. You can't make that emotional appeal where oh, people have to pay so much money, aren't you tired of paying all this money? And I know that doesn't sound like Joe Biden, but you're the one that wants to raise the taxes, and I'll critique Trump here too. Or I'll give him a critique. Minimum wage, unbiblical, shouldn't be a thing, shouldn't consider it. Get the government out of business, deregulate businesses, get out. It's not your role. Stop it.
We're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this
525
conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500-plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated
Biden doesn't
from
care
their
about
parents.
kids.
And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
They did it. We changed.
did not
They built the
separate
cages.
they-
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's
They
talk
did.
about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about.
He's not gonna answer it.
What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms.
But
Now they cannot
he's not answering the question. He's just pointing fingers at Trump, thinking he's not guilty of this.
alone.
Answer the question.
Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say this.
immigration.
They
10
went down.
seconds,
We
and
brought
then I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
that
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform.
That's a failure on the moderator's part. That question needs to be
Also
asked.
presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course.
Because Trump didn't
So
build
why should
those.
voters
Stuff like
trust
this was going on under Obama's presidency.
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
President
Kristen,
Trump,
he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed.
He did.
Without having a specific, we got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
Wrong.
Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family.
That's not wrong though. That's not wrong. The whole putting kids in cages and all that stuff. What's going on under Trump's presidency at the border is exactly what went on under Obama's presidency. Everything that Biden is saying he's going to do to change because it's all Trump's fault is stuff that they did, and he had 8 years, and neither one of them did it. Neither one of them did it. They have nothing here. Now look, countries have to have borders, right? I mean, like, liberals act like borders don't exist. Now, I don't think there should be a wall. I don't think you can defend that from a position of God's law at all. God's law, you don't have a wall bordering nation to nation. At least like with Old Testament Israel, there wasn't a wall built on the border of that nation, part of it or all of it, um, that we see commanded in God's law. Foreigners were able to come in and out, um, but like the liberals wanting foreigners to basically just treat the country as if there are no borders. I don't agree with either one of these individuals on everything they say about immigration. I definitely don't agree with Biden. Um, so
125 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All
blasphemy.
right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families.
Okay, let's hear what he says about the first
why these
responders.
parents fear for their children.
I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. Has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, yes, yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. But guess what? We have never, ever lived
you
up
know
to
the
it.
thing.
We've constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better...
All right, see, and again, this talking about black people in America when you're Joe Biden. First of all, remember, if you don't vote for Biden, you're not black. You're not actually black. You're not a good black person if you don't vote for Joe, which is a racist statement, by the way. Joe doesn't understand the role of government. He just displayed that in talking about all the things that government should be involved in his view, that biblically they should not be involved in, have no business to be involved in, and that's straight from God's word. Democratic policies are what has kept black people, well, not all black people, a lot of black people poor for so long in so many cities across the country. Candace Owens talks about this. Alveda King talks about this. Ben Carson talks about this. Vodi Bakum talks about this. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And in these same poor areas, let's talk about, loving minorities for a second and poor people. Planned Parenthood, at least 79% of their facilities are in all of these areas where you have poor black families. And that's not by accident. That's on purpose. Black people are targeted by Planned Parenthood because their founder, Margaret Sanger, known eugenicist and racist who said that she wanted to exterminate black people, was doing that via birth control. And since 1973, Planned Parenthood has been doing it via birth control, but not only that anymore, abortion. Over 20 million dead black babies because of the systemic and institutional racism in Planned Parenthood. I agree, Joe Biden, there is institutional racism in America, but it is not coming from the police force because there's not a law or rule in police There's not a law in the books for the police to go after black people, but there is a strategy from Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood about targeting black people. Let's talk about that systemic racism. Let's talk about that institutional racism, because that does exist. But he's not going to talk about that because he supports Planned Parenthood. Trump's not about abolishing that either, by the way.
As I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look,
all I'm saying is everybody loved Donald Trump when he was a Democrat. Democrats used to love Trump. And I will say this, Biden, you don't, for one, Biden, you don't really care about human life, but you don't care about black people. You certainly don't.
And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail.
Tell that to Kamala Harris. Mike Pence did in the vice presidential debate. Kamala Harris sent, 1,500 people to jail on marijuana convictions. By the way, biblically, nobody should go to jail for doing drugs. No one. In God's law, even if you're drunk and in public, you shouldn't go to prison for that. And I mean, unless you hurt someone, right? But tell that to Kamala Harris. Tell that to her. She arrested so many black people on drug charges. You care about black people? Your picked candidate for VP is an enemy of the black community in this country. You don't care, bro.
See this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up. Please respond, and then we're going to have follow-up
questions. If this stuff is true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody's
President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking about the issue.
Laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I have to respond to that.
Please,
because look,
very quickly.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties.
You know, I'm not saying Trump isn't corrupt either, because he is. Most people in American politics are, to be perfectly honest. But Biden is very much more than Trump is.
Issue of race. Mr. President, you've described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired.
But Trump was right about his Russia thing.
Americans who say that kind of language from a president
Trump
is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife.
And a lot of what he says about Biden.
The first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people. I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know.
and by
I mean, I
the
don't know
videos?
what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire, every single one. He started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to...
If you think, first of all, you have to prove Trump is a racist, and they just can't do it. Here's the only thing that I'll say about Trump. Refusing to abolish abortion fuels racism because racism goes on in Planned Parenthood. Aside from that, you can't prove that he's a racist. Aside from that, you can't make any ties to anything like that with Trump. You have to prove that Trump is a racist. There's no evidence of him being a racist. He's constantly denounced the Ku Klux Klan, white supremacy. And Biden, if you think he's the most racist president, you need to open a history book. Because the most racist presidents were people in your party.
Tens of thousands of black men, mostly in jail.
All right,
And you know what?
let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because if
Biden
you look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're
Yup.
fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
They
One
shouldn't.
of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill.
Look, I don't even care what he says here. That's exactly like what Kamala Harris did. So,
Particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But
Okay,
why
so-
didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
didn't get
38,000. We
anything
got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got
out-
nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released.
I mean, Trump's not wrong. Trump's not wrong there. He's just not. Now, I'm not saying Trump hasn't made empty promises either. I'm not saying Trump isn't a corrupt politician. Just pointing that out. But he's totally right on Biden. Biden's record sucks. Biden's record sucks. It's not good. And it's
Your time ago. Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that. I'm
like
going to
that
do
is
this.
too.
You
so.
put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President
Because we
Biden,
had
and
a
then we're
different-
going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
That's a good moment for Trump. It's a good moment for Trump.
You got to talk them into it, Joe.
All right.
Sometimes you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running out of
already done.
time, so we got to get on to
Okay.
climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say
Trump
that
was right.
environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden,
Biden
you
couldn't
have
answer those
said
things.
to be addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe.
We have very clean air and water. We have very clean air and water. It's unbelievable, and I don't understand why that's being denied. We do have clean air and water here in the United States, very much so.
The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change and climate warming, global warming, is an existential threat to humanity.
Oh my
We
goodness.
have a moral obligation to deal
Oh
with it.
my
We're told by all
goodness.
the leading scientists in the world.
Don't care what he even says. So this is such a controversial issue. You can't just appeal to scientists and be like, climate change is a threat. Well, you can appeal to good scientists. Read Answers in Genesis. Read Institute of Creation Research. Jason Lyle, Answers in Genesis. All these people have talked about climate change. Patrick Moore, though I disagree with him on a number of different things. On Crowder's show on PragerU talks about this. CO2 is not a bad gas. It is a good gas to have in our world. Climate change is not an existential threat to all life as we know it. That's not a biblical position. This earth will dat postmill, hashtag postmillennialism. This earth will always be here. Humans will always fill the earth will always be full of people. We don't have a moral obligation to do things like the Green New Deal. This isn't the government's job. The government's job is to punish evil. The government's job is to serve God. Be God's servant in the world. Punish evil. Be an avenger. Bring down that kind of vengeance. Obey the Son. Obey the King. That's your role. Not climate change.
I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, your
Today came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his
Nothing to do with
environmental
climate.
plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the
Yep.
climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing.
Yep, talking about the Green New Deal.
And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President
It
respond,
is
and we're running out of
crazy.
time, and we have a lot
And
more
you'll
questions to
destroy
get
our
to.
country.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group.
That was pretty funny.
Because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there.
Favorite part of the
And by the
debate.
way, the fastest growing industry in America is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, $45, $50 an hour. We can grow, and we can.
Look, the bottom line is wind and solar energy is not as efficient as fossil fuels are. Wind and solar energy, I mean, that's just not going to get the job done. Fossil fuels are cheap, they're organic, they come straight out of the ground. There is nothing wrong with using fossil fuel.
In carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
who said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really.
Yeah, fossil fuels being involved in some of these things, like Trump said, is a good point. But like electric cars, you know, your Teslas, your Priuses, and hybrids, and all those things. It takes fossil fuel to even make those, and the electricity comes from coal.
Oh, it's fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Show
he's
the list.
flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can.
Okay, I've seen the videos over and over again from Kamala and Biden. They are opposed to fracking, and they are totally fine with getting rid of it.
Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking and/or oil on federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they are making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely.
It's true. That's true.
I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions, the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close down the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close down the
falls-
oil
By
industry?
the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop,
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes
There we go.
significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
That is a big statement. That's a big statement. That's important.
that over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I
Ohio.
have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward.
Biden, you can't even talk, buddy. You can't even talk about that. Now, I'm not saying, tax people and give a bunch of federal money to these industries. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it does expose, he wants to give money to solar and wind, but he doesn't want to give money to oil and place restrictions or totally get out of things like fracking and fossil fuel. So, I mean, that
A country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4
Did I miss
million
the final
jobs in a
question?
short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country: decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half,
All right.
fantastic debate. Really
Well-
appreciate it.
Okay. Need to talk about the last few things that were said right there. He snuck healthcare in and climate change in, and clean energy and all those things. The character of this country. Biden, your character is. I'm not saying Trump's character is great, but Biden, your character is totally garbage. Garbage, trash. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing else to be said about that. But, well, I'm sure a lot can be said about that, actually. Um, the character of this country is on the ballot, and we're a good character if we use clean energy versus dirty energy. Um, Fossil fuel is not dirty energy. In fact, electricity that powers the electric cars, again, it comes from coal. Um, we use fossil fuel to do things like clean water and pump air. I mean, I'm sorry, not pump air, clean air. Um, Nobody's giving up fossil fuels. We use fossil fuel for everything, and it's not wrong to use fossil fuel. It's okay to use fossil fuel. It's not unbiblical. In fact, it's totally biblical to use what we can find in the earth um, for fuel. So, but that's the debate. I've talked about climate change in my other videos. It's environmentalism is not science, because you said that too. Science over fiction. This is coming from the party that argues for the murder of unborn children, the party that says it's not actually a baby. Oh, hold on. Gotta cancel that. All right. There we go. We'll just leave it there. The party that can't decide on whether or not there are only two genders, can't tell the difference between men or women. That's his party, and he's talking about science. It's just bad. It's not good. But anyway, that was the last presidential debate on today, October 22nd, 2020. Not as exciting or much of a mess as the last one, but still boring at some parts and exciting in other parts nonetheless. Trump won that debate. The moderator was better in this debate. Chris Wallace was trash, and the last moderator and the speakers at the town halls also, at least the one for Trump, like, no. But yeah, if you enjoyed this or if you didn't enjoy it, that's fine. Like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more videos. Check me out on my Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, even though I don't really use Twitter, TikTok, and Parler. I'm active on Parler. I'm very active on TikTok. And so you can check out more stuff there as well. Get me on those social medias, and again, stay tuned for more. Peace out.